Namaste yogis. Welcome to the second day of our yoga challenge. So just a reminder, in this challenge we're trying to figure out how to build a nice foundation for our practice. Means we're working a lot with our feet, ankles and overall the leg structure. So today I would like to share with you a few modifications of my favorite postures. And in these poses, we sometimes struggle, even though it's not an advanced posture, so it's really basic seated positions, but they are require a lot of flexibility and strength of the ankles, feet, and maybe even the calf muscles. So the first position is going to be Sukhasana or easy pose. I have a bunch of props today with me, but I will be using few props for each posture. So I will be starting with showing you the modification, which basically will be a restorative pose. If you ever been in a restorative class or in yoga class, you see how many things you are supposed to use. And this I gradually will remove the props and so showing you modification which you might be used by yourself at home if you don't have all these blankets and bolsters, and which you might be used just in a regular yoga class with a group, so you don't need to build up all this structure while the whole group already moving forward. So we're going to start with Sukhasana, as I said, and I will be using the modification I believe from the Iyengar yoga, and it will be 3 blankets for me. So I'm starting to building 3 blankets, one on the top of another. And I will be using the wall, that's why I'm filming today, sitting pretty close to the wall. So 3 blankets sometimes may be too high, but I'm just thinking, as I said, the first modification is the maximum what I can use. So 3 blankets, 1 blanket is going to be used as a roll. So I'm rolling it all the way. Nice. So I'm going to sit on the blankets and touching the wall. So Sukhasana is basically a cross-legged pose, easy pose, translated from Sanskrit. So sometime in this pose, we're feeling this, especially if the hips really tight, we're feeling a lot of pressure on the ankles. And it can be uncomfortable, it can lead to the rolling on the shoulders forward, just overall a very uncomfortable position. So I'm going to use this roll blanket to roll it all around my ankles to create this nice little cushion for my ankles, for my legs. So at the same time, it's supporting my knees, supporting my hips, sorry, and giving me a little bit more soft support underneath my ankle. So I'm sitting pretty comfortable here. So while we're using the wall in this pose, I want to build a really nice structure of my spine. So when I'm teaching the meditation, the people usually asking how straight should be my spine? Should I remove this curve from my lower back? Should I try to open my chest more? So basically your spine should feel as easy as you're staying in Tadasana or mountain pose. So there is no any pressure, no any strength on your spine. So we're trying to touch the tailbone, touching the sacrum, touching the floor, touching the wall behind you, and then as you're opening your shoulders, feeling the scapula or the shoulder blades, kind of drawing it towards each other and down, and then roll your shoulders open and touch the back side of your head into the floor, into the wall. So try to move your shoulders, rotate them backwards and down. At the same time, imagine somebody's pulling your head up, so you're creating this nice length on your neck. That's all we're doing on the big, nice inhalation. And as you're exhaling, completely release. So as you're releasing, your shoulders will roll away from the wall a little bit, so let it be. And just can close your eyes here. That pose is really nice for setting in, for tuning in. And because we have a wall behind us, it can also be using as for meditation or pranayama practice, but only because we have a wall. Otherwise, it's not a very good practice for meditation. It's not a very good pose for meditation. But at the beginning, when we just starting, when we're just learning, yes, that can be used, and this is a nice support for our spine and for our hips. So take a few breaths here. Each pose we're going to hold just for a little bit. So the point of this practice today to show you how you can modify your practice so it can be really helpful for you, especially if you had any injuries in your ankles, especially if they're really tight and stiff. So slowly, gradually, you can move from the very restorative pose to a little bit more advanced, we can say. So take a few more breaths here. Okay. And with the next inhale, I'm going to move away from the wall. So the next modification is going to be the reclining pose. Also restorative position. I'll show you this pose to just in case if you would like to use it to kind of open up the whole front side of your body. For this pose, I will be sitting in the same way, but I also will be using one block which will go underneath my shoulder blades. And I think I will remove one blanket because I don't have extra blanket, and I place it here so it will be used underneath my head. So each restorative pose taking some time to set up. So I'm going to sit in the same way as I was sitting close to the wall, and I'm going to rub my ankles. By the way, when you're doing this pose, if you practice it separately, don't forget to change your legs. So if you're holding it for some time, then you can change and hold the same amount of time. So if I'm using this kind of posture for meditation or pranayama, I'm usually doing the breathing exercise with one leg on the top, and then as I move into meditation, I'm changing another leg on the top, just a little tip. So reclining means basically I'm going to lay down forward. So the whole structure of my legs staying the same, and then I'm slowly bringing myself down. So the shoulder blades, the lower part of my shoulder blades going on the block, and then head going down. So for the head, you can use, of course, a little bit more support if you need. And then you can take your elbows behind and just open up, release. So I'm using a very hard block. That might be a little bit harsh for your spine, but just that's you should figure out by yourself, depending on how you're feeling in this position. And just take a few more breaths. That's a really nice opening in the front side of the body. And you can use this pose basically before you setting yourself into the seated position. It will help you to open up the shoulders. It will help you to just relax them completely. So then as you're sitting back into your meditation or into your seated position, you will have a little bit more space in your shoulders. And take a few more breaths here. With the next inhale, slowly pressing your elbows, your palms, and coming back up. Okay. So that was reclining pose. And these two postures I said was mostly restorative pose. You can hold them really for a long time without any uncomfortable feeling, hopefully. But when you're in the yoga class and Sukhasana, it's a very popular position from which we sometimes start in the yoga classes. So you might use just a little bit less props to set yourself in this pose. So let me show you something what you might be used for this position. So again, I'm going to use just one blanket this time. Two blankets, sorry. One blanket to sit on. And when I'm sitting here, I'm trying to sit so only my sit bones on the blanket. So I'm not sitting all the way. This way is just the sit bones touching the blanket. I kind of can shift my weight forward and shift it more towards the legs. So if your ankles is not bothering you, that's your position. If that still feels a little bit tight or it feels a little bit hard for your ankles or for your hips. So the same idea, we're going to roll all around the ankles, and that's really nice little support. So you can stay here, but here we already, without the ball, we have to work a little bit harder to maintain a straight, nice spine. Just a few breaths here. Again, as you're breathing through the nose, maybe close your eyes and concentrating on your spine, making sure the right and left sit bones touching the blanket, the floor. Trying to release the shoulders, just let the gravity pull your shoulders down, lengthening your neck. Next inhale, open your eyes. Okay, we're done with Sukhasana. So let's move further forward. Another one, for some reason, becoming a super popular pose in the Vinyasa Yoga, Vinyasa flow right now. It's Balasana, the child pose. So though the Balasana taken as a restorative, and you very often can hear, if you feel tired, you can just anytime come to the Balasana or the child pose. But for some people, actually, this pose is a really challenging pose, and you cannot relax in it at all. So let's see what we can do to try to really make it a bit more restorative. So and again, I'm starting with using maximum of the blocks, of the blocks. So I'm going to use the bolster and I'm going to use the blanket. So if you have a super sensitive knees, what you can do for this pose? I'm going to place the blanket down. I'm placing my knees as wide so my belly can breathe in between my thighs. And very often what I see on the class is that the people cannot really sit on the heels yet, so they're kind of hovering here and they don't have support, neither for the hips nor for the head, for the forehead. So I'm always suggesting to have this nice big bolster underneath so I can move and at least place my forehead down to the floor. So here's a few variation, forehead into the floor. You can grab your elbows and place your forehead on the forearms, or you can even make two fists, one on the top of another, and place your forehead on the fist. So the idea is so your forehead have this support, and you can relax the facial muscles, especially at the beginning of the class. Can be really nice. Coming up. So another restorative pose, even more restorative than this. This pose mostly will work if you're going to spend a bit more time in this pose. So I'm using the bolster, I'm using the block, placing it along. So my bolster now slightly up. And your choice does depend how thick is your bolster. You can use a couple of blankets on the top. I'm going to place only one, that will be enough for me, but you can use as much as you want. So I'm sitting close to my hips again, my knees wide, and I'm lowering myself all the way towards the bolster, hugging this bolster is my favorite pillow. And your choice, you can place your forehead down, you can use again this support underneath, but I found it's a little bit more comfortable as you placing your cheek on the bolster and staying equal amount of time on the right and on the left cheek. 2 minutes on this side, and if somebody's counting for you, if you have just a time for yourself, if you're doing it at home, you can just switch the side and place it on another side. So, moving forward, and moving forward into the next modification for this pose, which you might use just in the regular yoga class. So bolster and blankets, that's all very nice, but to use the minimum props, I'm going to just roll the blanket. And when I'm sitting, I'm just placing it underneath. So basically, instead of using the bolster, I'm using the blanket. I'm going down. And again, your variation of posture, either your arms extended, forehead down. If that's not gonna work, elbows and forearms, or maybe even one face on the top of another. Sometimes I see the people using the blocks, but it all depends on which kind of block you have in the room, because this is really hard and can be a little harsh for your forehead. So, but if you're using it, just place it kind of in diagonal and create this pushing, so you're holding the block by pushing your forehead into the block. All right, and the three more challenging postures than these two. It's Virasana and Vajrasana first. So I put them together because they kind of are using the same setup when we're trying to support it. So let's start with Virasana. So the Virasana pose is when we're trying to sit in between the feet, rotating the calves out and sit in between the feet. That is the hero pose. Vira means hero in Sanskrit. So the position of the palms is optional, can be used for a short meditation, for a short breathing technique, especially such technique as Ujjayi or any cool down breath. So what you can do with this position, you can often hear, if you cannot sit between your feet, sit on the block. So that's nice, but many people with a knees problem cannot do this. So again, what we're going to do is use the block, even without the block because my bolster is so thick, but block giving a little bit more support underneath the bolster. So I'm placing the block lengthwise and then placing on the top of it the bolster. And I'm trying to sit back. So that's removing a lot of tension from my knees together, removing a lot of pressure from my heels, from my ankles, and working on keeping my spine straight, open up my throat, the beautiful position to breathe Ujjayi. This pose can be used for cool down at the end of the practice. So that's the first one. My bolster is really big, so sometimes as you practice mature, you'll feel that there is nothing really going on. Yes, it's comfortable, but there is no really effect of the pose, which is supposed to work with our ankles, with our calf muscles. So what you can do is, instead of the bolster, using the blanket, you can roll it, making a roll. You can use the blanket, or you can use the yoga mat, sticky yoga mat, so it's a little bit more squishy, maybe a bit more comfortable. So you can sit here. That's also good for those who has really muscular calf muscles. So that's a little nice pressure. It's like a knuckle pressure for those people. It can be a little intense at the beginning, but with the time as you're relaxing, it can bring actually lots of benefits for you. So you can take a few breaths. So that you can take as a variation of Virasana or Vajrasana also. So Vajrasana is the same idea, but we're sitting on the heels. But this position is kind of bringing the same benefits for those. You can also tuck your toes under and try to challenge your feet a little bit more. For this time, you don't need a block, just this little blanket to sit on. So a few breaths here. So that's a multiple different variation of this position. I'm just trying to share with you what can be useful in the different situations. Nice. So we're done here, and let's give it a try to reclining position. That's a really intense pose and requires to use a lot of different props. It's purely restorative pose, and again, you're working with the opening up the front body. What I'm going to do is I'm going to place my block bolster on the top. I'm going to also use two blankets. So I want to build kind of a little stairs, one after another. I'm sitting here. In between my feet. So you can sit also on the block if that feels a little bit more comfortable for you. And slowly I'm lifting my pelvis up and lowering myself all the way down, releasing my arms. So that's releasing the psoas muscle, releasing the whole front side, the hip flexor. You can just release my arms to the sides. I can keep my palms to my thighs. What is more comfortable for you? And stay here as long as you. And again, that might be quite intense. You can keep only one leg in Virasana, another leg extended, and then after half time, just change. That's your position. But the more important, you need to use as much props or as much blankets so you feel you can actually let go the tension in your lower back. So you're not holding this pose, using and straining your lower back as much as you can. Okay. So by the way, something else came in my mind while I was in Supta Virasana. Let me show you one more variation for the Virasana position. For those actually who has very sensitive ankles. Just one more and we will move towards the final pose. So what we can do to support our ankles is to use the block, okay? And use the blanket. So here you have to play a little bit with the blanket because we all have different sensations in the feet. So I'm using it to just slightly lift it up, see, and have a little cushion for my ankles. And again, I'm sitting on the block. So I'm sitting on the block, my ankles will be slightly elevated. So maybe you'll need to use a couple of blocks. And again, the position of the block actually completely optional. The more important, you can sit on it. And the block can be soft, which is making it even harder to sit on. So on the soft block, you can place the blanket to have a little bit more surface to sit. So in this pose, it's a really soft and nice opening for the ankles, and you can sit just a little bit, for example, few breaths, let's say 5 breaths, you're sitting in this pose, then you're placing your palms down, releasing, and then coming back for another 5 breaths. So never sit to the moment when you will feel the sharp pain, of course, or just any kind of pain. It can be uncomfortable, it can be sore, it can be something what I would call that your mind telling you, oh my god, this is so uncomfortable, I want to get out of here. But if it's not pain, it's just, you can let it go. You know, it's just the mind which is supposed to be letting go when we practice. Okay. And another one is actually the most favorite for me position, and I found it super beneficial for our society in this age because we're sitting so much on the chairs and everything we're doing actually in the seated pose. So this is 2 positions. One of them is Kakasana or the crow pose. So I'm going to show you first what kind of position is this because I found that this is not very popular in the yoga classes here. So I'm going to keep my feet together and shift my weight on my feet, trying to keep the heel and the toes on the floor, and then bringing my palms together. At the same time, I'm lengthening my crown up and my seat bone down, hugging my knees to the chest and trying to elongate my spine, elongate my lower back. And this is not so easy as it might seem from the side. So let's see. That requires a lot of mobility of the ankles. And the more often people would stay here because once they started to move on the heels, they will fall down. So what we can do in this case is roll the blanket and place it underneath the heels. So you have the support, and then you slowly can work towards it. Of course, it's much more useful if somebody, actually as a teacher or somebody with whom you're practicing, can adjust to support you, because in this way it can be a bit more productive for you. So when you're sitting here, just somebody is pulling your arms so you can work your spine. But if nobody around, you can always use the blanket, or you can just roll your sticky mat and it will be a little roll underneath your heels. So for the pregnant women, or just a little bit more easier position, when you're placing the feet a little wider, in the yoga classes I found here they call it Garland pose, I think, or Malasana. So I will call it, it's a variation of Kakasana, you can call it Malasana also, it's not so important. So we're going to sit here and bring the feet a little bit wider. So your choice, either palms on the floor, fingertips on the floor, maybe palms together. And again, you're pushing your knees to the sides, bringing your palms together. You can stay here, closing your eyes for a few breaths. It's so beneficial to release in your lower back, everything around the sacrum, working with your digestive system. So here the same idea, if your heels are lifted, you can always use the blanket underneath. Another way to prop yourself here, to use the block and sitting on the block for a few breaths. But I found that sitting on the block is not so good for this pose, really, because it's kind of making you to move forward around the spine. I see it a lot in the classes. So I would always suggest to use the blanket underneath the heels. So this way you can feel this heaviness of bony structure of your sacrum, of your pelvis pulling you down. So that was the Malasana. So there was a few modifications for you which you can use in the yoga classes, which you can use at home. And I would suggest you to start trying from the restorative variation of pose and just exploring how it feels for you, what maybe issues you're having right now, or maybe it's just completely comfortable for you. You can go straight into the final variation without using any props. I'm not a big fan to using the props, so I would tell you, you're using all this little support to just make your way towards the final pose where you're using only your body, and when you making yourself comfortable having only your body and maybe your sticky leg. So that's the point. Okay guys, thank you for watching me today. I hope the practice was useful for you. So it was the second day. The next day is going to be the big and nice practice for the whole body, lots of standing postures and how to protect our knees and feet into the standing postures. So thank you for watching. If you have any questions, leave it in your comments and I will answer you. Take care about yourself. Namaste.